Welcome to Story Hour, a virtual meetup hosted by Wolf and Heron. Okay, Bart, the stage is yours.
As I'm carrying the last cabinet in to the kitchen that I'm remodeling for some friends, and I'm looking at the box. It doesn't look right. I put it down, I unbox it, and I look at the cabinet. I look at the fridge. I look at the cabinet, and the cabinet's supposed to go over to the fridge. And there's a few very inexorable truths to carpentry. And one thing is that an inch is an inch is an inch. It's not 7/16. It's not 31/32. It's an inch. And so I took out my tape measure because it's always right. And I put it on the cabinet, 30 inches. Put it on the fridge, 36 inches. 30 inches. Yep, 36 inches. It's still the same measurements. And I go, well, that can't be right. Somebody screwed that up. So I go, I just look at the plans. Let's look at the plans because the plans will tell me who screwed up, right? So I look at the plans, and on the plans, which I have drawn, it says on the cabinet above the fridge, 3-0. Now you would think that says 30 inches. 3-0 means 3 foot 0 inches. So I'm like, see, I was right. Then you look a little closer at the plans, and all the other cabinets have different numbers on them. Like the one next to it has 2 and a 6. It doesn't have a dash, which means 26 inches, not 2 foot 6 inches. All the other cabinets have inches. The one above the fridge has foot inches. So whose problem is this? Let's go to the order sheet. That'll tell me what's up. So I go to the order sheet and look at the order sheet, go down the line. Oh, yeah, 30 inches. It's 30 inches right on the order sheet, 30 inches wide. Okay, and right about this time, you're looking at that, get the tape measure back out. Maybe it's better now. Measure it again, and you look and you go, yep, the world just stopped spinning. And the universe is about to collapse on itself. And I'm standing in this kitchen, which I'm remodeling for friends of mine, and Allie happens to come home. She walks in the door. She looks at me, and I've known Allie for many years, old friends of mine. She goes, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Well, wrong's a good word to be using right now." And I said, Allie, there's a lot going through my head. Still trying to process. And I said, I fucked up. Yeah, it's pretty much what's wrong right now is that I'm wrong. And I have been wrong for quite some time. I just didn't know it until now. Like before, about 5 minutes ago, when I measured the cabinet, everything was right. Even though I had been wrong from the start, now I felt wrong, right? And we all know what wrong feels like. And I just, kind of admitted, I said, we got a problem. We got to order this cabinet. It's going to take probably about 6 weeks to get another cabinet, and your beautiful kitchen is not going to be done until that cabinet is ordered and installed. And I said, well, don't worry. I will cover the cost of the cabinet. It's my mess up, all that stuff. Oops, there we go. I'm locking up. So the best part about that in the end was her the next day. Allie comes to talk to me the next day. She goes, "Bart, I got to tell you, I was blown away when I came in and I looked at you. You didn't make an excuse. You didn't try to blame the thing. You didn't say the plans were wrong. You didn't say anything. You said, yeah, fucked up. Let's get it fixed." She goes, I'm a counselor and I work with people, especially in the church. And it's amazing how many people have an excuse and can point a finger at everybody else around them for all kinds of mistakes. It's just a cabinet, but you owned it. She goes, I'll pay for the cabinet. She goes, you put in your time to put the cabinet in. I'll pay for the cabinet. kitchen got done. They love it. They enjoy it. The whole family eats there. They have a good time. And to this day, I'm still doing work for them. That's it.
You're hired.
Yay. Okay. All right. So what was great about Bart's story? What should he hold on to? Go ahead, Kara.
I thought that was a great example of the use of dialogue, both between people and internal dialogue. So there's a lot of internal dialogue. We definitely felt the thoughts that were going through your head because most of that wasn't said out loud. And then also, she didn't say much, but you had Allison come in the room and you didn't say, and then she said, you just said, Allison came in the room, what's wrong? Or something along those lines. And it was so small, but natural and really helped to create this moment where all of this would happen. So I thought that was just really well done. The use of the internal dialogue and then giving her a sentence to be present in the scene.
Thank you.
I would piggyback off that and say part of what made it so effective is that your dramatization, the delivery, your physiology as you were storytelling was really, really helpful. Kind of like looking at the cabinet, looking at the spot above the fridge, looking at the cabinet again. Like you can, like just by acting that, you don't have to have as many words, and we get a lot. We actually feel it more viscerally because you're showing us how it went. And that shows up again in the dialogue and again in your internal thoughts. So it's all good techniques. What else? What else was good? What should Bart hold on to?
Besides giving me intense anxiety because I bought cabinets for my renovation, I really, I thought the flow of it was just very like captivating, and I was paying attention because, I've been hopefully won't have to go through that this game the entire time.
Well, now if you do, it's fine.
Well, I know who to call now if my cabinet installers don't work out.
Well, I guess another thing that I would say is just from a thematic perspective, we are always really excited when people tell stories that have relevance at work. And this is a good example of a story that is totally a story I can imagine you sharing with a friend over a coffee or a beer, and simultaneously a story that you could very easily use in a mentorship situation, or even in sales conversations potentially, because it communicates a lot about your character, and those are relevant when in business. So it's good.
Oh, and I kind of went off the theme. I used the theme for the workshop or the vulnerability at work.
Yeah.
That was
that was it.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't go off theme at all, actually. It was like exactly it. So yeah. Any thoughts? Any other thoughts before we move on to opportunities for experimentation? Okay. What should Bart experiment with?
So I don't know if this is a good example of something to experiment with, but when you started to tell your story, I immediately started to think about the NASA. I'm sure everybody's heard about NASA's error when I think it was a Mars rover or something, when they used metrics instead of they mixed up the metrics. Anyway, you should look at that story if you haven't, because you might be able to weave some, at least it wasn't $125 million space aircraft traveling to Mars, to sort of, put some perspective on it,
Yeah.
But my head went to that sort of like,
okay.
This is a good problem, but it's not as bad as some of the other problems I've heard of in life.
Yeah.
Similarly, I wanted to know, like, you described the problem in great detail and your dialogue around like figuring out the problem. And at the same time, I wanted to know, how big of a deal does this feel like? Like, were you ashamed? Were you angry? Were you cursing during this period of time? Was this like going to be an expense that you could write off? Was this going to be 50% of what you expected to take home the next week? Like, how crushing was this for you or not? I wanted to see, because I'm like, okay, it doesn't fit. So clearly there's an error, and it's probably monetary and it's probably time and labor. But other than that, I don't really know how big of a deal this is for you, or why. Maybe because these are your friends, do you care even more than if it were another client? I think there's more that you could expose in that space.
And to piggyback off that, I think there is possibility for you to be considering, what are you going to do now? Right? What you kind of jump to this situation where Allie shows up and you own it. But I don't get any insight into, did you consider blaming someone else? Did you consider, trying to jerry rig something that doesn't quite fit? Like, what were the other options that you were thinking about? Because I think if you consider other options, it actually makes the choice of just owning it more powerful. Especially if what you're like, if you're thinking about like, well, I have to protect my reputation. Like what are you potentially risking by owning it?
All right. Yeah. No, I get where you're coming from. Yeah. On that time, money.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like magnitude of the problem. And then also, what's at risk? Yeah.
Like,
what else?
Ending, how she was like, I'll just pay for it. So maybe you could like add like kind of a lesson like that you from it. Like, well, I'm really glad I did own up to like, if I had acted another way, that it may not have happened. So
$400 more in my pocket. Yeah.
Right.
Well, or like, I do think it's a worthwhile story. And I know you're not strictly in carpentry anymore, but, in the universe of telling people that you work with that you would go, like, you'll do the right thing by them, or you'll go above and beyond for them. I think it makes sense in that type of situation. So if you were to use it in that situation, how you would want to think, Allison's point of like the ending, how do you then connect the dots for them of, like, that's not the exact decision or problem that we'll face in our work together. But I want you to know that when it comes to something like that, I'm like you and I will be in it together and we'll figure it out and blah, 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 I'll do the right thing by you. I think you can make that transition to present day, or why it even matters. If you pick a specific moment when you would tell the story. Now that you know the theme, now that you have the story, what is the moment when you might use it, and how can you transition to that point via the ending of the story?
To that point, like what Stephanie said about evaluating the risks that might come with you, I would think about it in that way, and not as much about what are the other options I could take, maybe, because I think there's also something to be said for the fact that, like, whether or not you were going through other thoughts in your head of potential options, which I'm sure you were, there's something to be said for, well, yeah, I didn't even think of anything else. Like, obviously the only solution is to come clean about it, because I think that also says something about character. Well, and so I would, think about how you want. I mean, you could go either way, of course, but how you frame it. There's two ways to see that.
The process of like checking the plans, checking them order, is kind of a like, okay, who messed this up?
Who messed this up?
Yeah, no, and I like to like going through that process of like, okay, 3-0.
Like this and that. You're like, yep, nope. Yeah, pretty much is me. Yeah. But it's also, I also tried to weave in a little bit of, and I don't know if people caught it, but it's a fascinating thing about like the whole being wrong thing, because I work in building failure now. So, everybody, it's like that whole thing of like, you ask people how they feel when they're wrong. And they explain how they feel when they're wrong. And I go, well, that's how you feel like when you know you're wrong, typically. But up until the point that you know you're wrong, it feels a hell of a lot like being right. You know? So it's like, the building's been messed up. Like I messed it up. I've been wrong for months. Right. I just didn't know it yet. Yeah. Right. It's like, this was the moment where I found out, oh yeah, I'm wrong. Right. And so there's a lot of that in the world where, it's like, it's okay. It's kind of an explanation of like, it's been going on like this for a long time. You just didn't know yet. Mm-hmm. So really there's not much difference outside of the fact that you're more knowledgeable on the situation. So
yeah. It's like pre and post epitome. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bart, for your story. Always a pleasure. Visit wolfandheron.com to find out more about our story hours.